and welcome to Jour. I am here with Naomi Fox Reina from joylight.co. Fabulous. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here.
So, I know that you are about all things to deepen not only our connection with the divine, whatever, whether that means the universe or a god or, whatever that means to a person. It could be the unity between all things and the vibrations that go between us. Like, I'm open. I don't,
Yeah.
I think that what we don't know is so much more than what we do. So, using tools, I know you're a fan of HD human design, right? So
Yes,
talk to me about some of the tools that you enjoy using with your clients. And then, I'll weigh in with what has been working for mine.
absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much. So, yeah, the connecting to the divine, I believe, is a process of connecting to ourselves and connecting to that higher power, God,
Mhm.
the universe. What I'm like you, I see that there's so much that we don't know. I believe all truth can be circumscribed into one great whole. And that if we have this, I'll bring a little truth, I'll bring a little truth over here, it's kind of like, oh, I didn't know that. And we can come together and we can learn and grow and thrive. So, as I was on my journey, I got introduced to human design and astrology. And all of a sudden, it busted wide open what I thought I knew about myself.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And because I was trying to be one way. I was trying to hustle, and I was trying to be this, not be that. And it was really creating some unpleasant circumstances, as in
Okay.
like terrible marriages that needed to be ended because I was trying so hard to be something that I
Yeah.
turns out I just wasn't. And so it wasn't until I really claimed who I actually was, the divine map of myself, that
Hmm.
I could then even really fully connect with God. Like I had always been a God-centered person, but there was this block because I
Yeah.
was getting in my own way. I couldn't even hear what God was trying to tell me because I was so preoccupied with being something that I just simply wasn't.
And I want to address that as well because I also am a veteran of failed marriages and relationships. And when we are attuned to whatever our subconscious has put together in an unexamined way, and what I mean by that is if we don't really understand what makes ourselves tick, and we can't, then how are we going to understand or do anything about ourselves, our life, our family, our, kids, parents, everybody? The most revolutionary thing that I underwent was doing mindset work and identifying why I thought, okay, this is how money is. This is how relationships are. This is what it is to be a woman. This is what it is to be a sister, a mother, a daughter, like all the things. And really just being curious with myself, which is a lot harder than you might think, to really understand where did I get these ideas from? And then slowly, it was like a peeling an onion, one layer at a time. I recognized whether you want to call it intuition, the voice of God, or that knowing. I hadn't had that in decades
Mm-hmm.
because I had been reverberating with stress and toxic relationships in order to recreate the chaos of my growing up years. So when we don't understand why we are the way we are and how are we anyway, then it's flippity flargin impossible for us to understand, like, how do we relate to the greater world, to our neighborhood, our household, our country, our state, our, the whole world. Like, how are we part of this community? And what is the divine? Do I am I in tune with it? Can I hear it? And I think that we all are, via our gut impulses, the so-called gut, with that beautiful nerve connection between our brain and our guts, our intestines, our stomach. Um, and so I would love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just over here like resonating with everything you're saying. Like, we have to begin to see the connections between
Mm-hmm.
how our brain was mapped when we were younger and then as we get older. I actually feel a little bit like an odd duck in the world of like, hey, I've been divorced a couple of times because I grew up very stable and I grew up in a pretty like loving home that was calm. I was never yelled at. I was never mistreated. I had all of that. And it was actually understanding my astrology and human design that helped me to answer that question of how did I end up in not just one, but two extremely terrible marriages? We're not talking like marriages where we fought about money and sex. Like, it was like within a week of marrying my first husband, he was screaming at me and throwing things. And I
Mm-hmm.
had never, nobody had ever raised their voice to me before.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
yes. And so it was traumatizing as an adult. And so I felt like I couldn't, it didn't make sense because it's like, oh yeah, it's not like I grew up, getting smacked around or being told that I was worthless or anything like that at all. And I had 9 siblings and none of them ended up in remotely similar circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And so astrology and human design gave me the answers of like, well, it's because you've got this in your design, you've got this going on because you have this gate that you're having this very specific experience that is
Mm-hmm.
perfect and beautiful, and that I contracted to do it. On some level, my consciousness was like, yep, let's go. And so it helped to make sense of things that were, I think, not understandable through a little bit more traditional or even non-traditional methods. Because
Mm-hmm.
every time I would go look at my past, it was like, well, like my parents were a little bit emotionally unavailable, but like that was the extent of my childhood trauma.
Yes, and that was normal for the time. It's not like
100%. Everybody
being
went through that.
emotional self-awareness, regulation, none of that was a thing. It
No.
was just keep yourself out of jail and don't embarrass us, like literally, just like I have successfully raised my children.
Yes.
You can see them right there, they're alive. It
Yes.
was a
Yes.
completely
That was the
different standard.
barometer. Yes.
Exactly. Now it's like, are they self-realized? Do they really understand who they are? Have they found the group activity that makes them sing? Whether it's a sporting thing or, like how do they work in the community? How do they do this or that? None of that was even a factor. And so when you talk about, whether it's boomers, Gen X, like there's a whole range of
Yes.
generations
Yes.
that were like, puff, puff, give. I have to start from scratch and teach myself this stuff.
Yeah, and my mom is a boomer and my dad is from the greatest generation. They're actually from different generations even though they're only 4 years apart. And my dad's parents were 34 when they got married. And so my
Oh, wow.
dad was raised by parents that were much older than his peers' parents. And so my dad in a lot of ways is much older than
Mm-hmm.
his people his same age. And my dad is a lovely person. He's like Data from Star Trek. No guile, like very curious, but very low emotional um, tenacity. And just it wasn't there in some ways. In other ways, he was emotional. I saw him tear up about family history stories. Like that is
Oh.
like what gets to him, and that's his passion. And so seeing my parents, they're still married. They've been married 50, I think they just had their 53rd, no, 54th anniversary.
Sure,
And
Molly.
yeah. And so just like sometimes in the conversation of like, hey, why are you screwed up? It's like, I've got my badges. I'm almost like, well, I got 2 terrible marriages that I can bring to the table. And so just being able to look at that and see and analyze from that perspective, and then to heal from those marriages and heal the patterns that were more deeply ingrained than even my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to kind of rewire things on a spiritual level. It turns out like my sun gate in human design is gate 9, which is the gate of focus. Part of the sun gate 9 is that the people who have that, which are going to be born around like November 25th ish to December 1st or 2nd ish, depending on the year that you're born, a lot of the trauma that we experience is not in this life. It's actually from previous existences that we're here to work out. And that's why there's not like a match, like, oh, I'm having this thing and I can point to the childhood experiences that I had. And so just being able to know that and know when clients have similar things and being able to free them from things that are kind of stuck in a shame loop, just give different answers, or to look at their design and say, okay, well, this is how your aura type is most likely to be living in shadow. Let's look at that and see how much you are living in shadow and how much you are living aligned and true to yourself. Because the more we're living aligned, we're just going to be happier. It's inevitable. It's the mechanics of it.
Right. But let me ask you something. So
Mhm.
theoretically, right, you could have an infinite number of people conceived at the same millisecond, and they're going to be born, whether it's hours, days, or weeks apart, which would impact their human design because that's based on where you were born, where in the world,
Yes.
and the time at that local place, all that sort of thing. So even if they were all born at the exact same spot at the same medical center, if you had 50, 100 babies, you know, that were conceived at the same time, that could be a month-long fiesta of births. You know what I'm saying? So it makes me
Uh-huh.
wonder, like, what is it about the birth it's very important in, like, your ancient Chinese
Yes.
thought, in and medicine. It's just a hugely impactful thing. I know that in Japan today, people will try to get pregnant in order to have a child according to a specific sign or month. So I guess help the skeptic see, like, I because I don't, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me.
I totally appreciate that, and I was so skeptical about this. I actually just didn't see anything that was worthy of respect, or anything solid about astrology or human
Hey,
design.
let me interject. Hang on. I don't care if you're doing watercolors or
Yeah,
shooting skeet mark clay things.
yeah,
If it helps you know yourself, it's valid.
yeah. I 100% agree. I grew up in a very academic family, and so I just had that kind of training, even though it turns out I'm a deeply intuitive person. And so it wasn't until I saw the value in it that it started to
Mm.
make sense. And then once I saw the spiritual value and the connection value within myself, I started to do the research. And I actually have a brother who's a rocket scientist. And I have a sister who is a computational astrophysicist. And so, like, when I say I come from an academic family,
Oh
it's
yeah,
really true.
it's
And
deep.
so, my brother is awesome, and he's humble enough, which isn't always found in academia, um, that he and I were chatting over, some Thanksgiving gathering at my parents' years ago, and he was like, "I found this study that showed that there's a measurable difference on Earth based on the position of the moon, but also other planets." And so he's like, "I think I found scientific proof that astrology is valid." And
Ooh.
because the moment you're born, the reason why the moment and location of your birth matters is because at that moment, there is an infusion of the energy on the planet, just like there is right at this
Oh,
exact moment, of the
okay.
cross sections of the different planets and celestial bodies, the luminaries, and how they are impacting Earth. But I also love the idea that it's not that the planets cause us to do things. You can't be like, Mercury is in retrograde, I'm sorry, I'm a jerk. Like, but that the planets are a mirror to what is going on here. So it's the concept of as above, so below.
Oh, right. And then that is also circuitous logic to discuss what
Yes,
influences what. Is it what's happening here
exactly.
that, because, like,
Yes.
I worked at a casino for a few years, and I'm
Yeah,
here to tell you, when it's a full moon,
it's different.
Katie, bar the door. There's going to be some effed up stuff
Yeah.
happening.
And you go hang out in an ER on the night
Oh.
before and the night of and the night after a full moon. Yeah, you're gonna get some juicy stuff.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's become more commonplace. Like, people who work in prisons will comment on it. Like, you have people in these kind of forced institutional places like the ER and prison that
Hmm.
are going to have unique observations, and a casino, which in some ways arguably could be like, it's sort of forced because the addiction compulsion is so strong
Right.
that
Or you're there for your, even your friend's wedding party, or,
exactly,
whatever.
it's
Like,
scheduled, it's happening.
yeah.
Yes. And so that's pretty much understood. And a lot of people that aren't even into the woo whatsoever will be like, well, yeah, the moon controls the tides and we're mainly made of water. And so it
Right.
makes sense that there could be some measure of an impact on us. What that impact is, we don't know. But
Hmm.
with astrology, this ancient thing that is part of the system of human design as well, is understood that these planets are indicating aspects of the energy that you were running at the time that you were born.
That
Yeah.
is the coolest explanation. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I would love, now I want to get deep. I'll talk to you offline. I need to get in touch with your brother, and I need to, like, I'm ready to nerd up. This is a rabbit hole. I hope I have insomnia soon, because that's when I get real deep on my research.
Yeah, I link the study in my astrology certification course, because I have a full certification course in astrology and a full certification course in human design, and so I link that in there because we do talk about that with my astrology students, because it is, many times people want the logical explanation either for themselves or to give to their well-meaning, trying to be generous, friends and family that are questioning, like, wait, you're doing what?
Right.
And so mhm.
No, I appreciate that very much. And I hope you will share that resource with me. And I want to address, when we are doing something for ourselves, right? Whether you're doing mindset work, you're delving, putting your toe in the waters of, astronomy, astrology, human design, Myers-Briggs,
Yeah.
whatever you're doing to understand yourself and to really be like, okay, who am I really? Because we tell ourselves stuff all the time. Right?
Mhm.
Like, I
Yeah.
can say, like, I am a very generous and kind spirit. That is true. And
And sometimes you can find yourself screaming cuss words at strangers.
exactly. Yes, there are more threads to that
Mhm.
tapestry. We're all multifaceted. We are
Yeah.
all morally ambiguous. There is, if we're on a bell curve for, and I believe this for anything, whether it's your character, your sexuality, your morality, like anything, we're mostly in the middle, mixed
Yeah.
up. And then there are a few
But
that are
yes.
over on the fringe of the bell curves on either side that are
Mhm.
100% this way or 100% that way. And by a few, I mean 0.00000 infinity one.
Yes. Yes, I
So,
can totally get behind that. And within us, we have such a beautiful spectrum of capabilities, and especially if we're put under the right circumstances for long enough. If you're nurtured and loved and supported long enough, what is possible to come out? And if you're neglected and destabilized and abused long enough, what is capable to come out? One
mhm.
of the concepts that I've just been thinking about even more this week than normal is the idea of truth, and that it is rare to find someone who truly loves truth and understands what that even means, because most of us love the fantasy that we've created for ourselves. I
Yes.
I've told my husband the quote by Wallace Wattles that 2% of people think, 3% of people think they think, and 95% of people would rather die than think. And I loved that concept for so long, and he and I would talk about it all the time when we first met and everything, and I was telling him because I met somebody this week who needed help, and somebody said, "Oh, you should go talk to Naomi." And so this wasn't a person that really understood what I do and how I do it, which is totally fine. I'm
Yeah.
very happy to have those conversations. But it was interesting the level of resistance. She's like, "Well, my husband had an affair a year and a half ago and he won't let her go. Like, she won't let him go, and we're best friends and we have an amazing beautiful life together, and I just don't know what to do," and all of this. And so after she came and sat on my couch, she's someone I knows locally, her stepdaughter, and so that's how she ended up in my space. And as I'm talking with her, I'm like trying to gently say, like, "Sweetheart, you say that your husband had this affair and that is persisting in communicating with her, that they're not physically together anymore, but he can't and won't put it down. And you're also saying you have a beautiful life and you're best friends." I said, "These two things cannot actually both be true." And so, because I was like, well, truth is what will set you free, and it will be very
Or
painful.
let me offer, if she can reframe
Yes.
that, that it's not, you don't betray a relationship with your body, or,
Yes.
if you're having a physical affair or even an emotional affair, that, you're not writing any checks that you can't cash. If she can convince herself of that as true, absolutely she can have this beautiful relationship. But, and I dare say she probably does not believe that. She's putting up some
Yes.
smoke and mirrors because she doesn't want to look at the difficult choices.
Exactly. Yeah, there is a way that, I mean, you could have a beautiful, wonderful relationship with a spouse where you are best friends and they are still engaged in an emotional or physical affair, and
Mhm.
you can still be okay with that. Like, there are marriages where that is okay,
Absolutely.
but that would be the truth and the reality that you both agree to. But if it's like, hey, please put her down, no, I won't. Okay, now I'm going to go back to smiling my screwed on smile and being like, we have such a lovely life, except for this one fly in the ointment. And it's like,
Right.
that's not living in reality, which is 100% okay. You don't have to live in reality.
No.
You can repaint your life and call it whatever you want.
Right.
But what I found in my arduous journey, and I'm quite confident that you as a soul sister understand this deeply as well, and probably many of your listeners, is that really and truly, as the Bible says, the truth shall set you free. But
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, very few people want the truth. And my husband mirrored that back to me as I was like processing this with him the other day. He's like, it's like you say about thinking. He's like, 2% of people want the truth, 3% of people think they want the truth, and 95% of people would rather set their life on fire
Mm-hmm.
than actually look at the reality of truth. And I know I used to be that person. I did not want to see reality. Like,
Right.
married to my each of my husbands, especially my second, I was very committed to my delusion that we had a wonderful marriage and that he was the best ever and I was lucky to be with him and just all of these things. Meanwhile, he's hitting me behind closed doors and never not cheating on me and going like, just I was really contorting myself to an extreme
Absolutely.
degree.
And that's when you start to get the mystery illnesses, like what I call,
100%.
stressoria. Like, no, it's not natural to have diarrhea every single day for years at a time. But I was just like, oh, it's just work stress. It's fine. It's not
Your
fun.
body is like waving all the flags and sending out all the alarms, and you're like, shush, 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 shush. It's fine.
Yeah, I have acne and I'm 45 years old. It's fine. It's fine. So I can laugh at that now
Yeah.
because I have been the uncomfortable realizer or recipient of the truth. And I don't have to like it. I can be just as I can be uncomfortable in my personal growth, I can also be uncomfortable with how things are. And
Yes.
all that is data. So like you're coming at
Exactly.
it from
Yes.
like the HD, the
Yeah.
planets aspect,
Yes.
and I'm like, get that journal out.
Yes, 100%. Yes, exactly. Bring the tools, bring the ways, shine a light on it from this perspective. And when what I've observed in myself and in others, the reason why we don't want to look at the truth is because we don't know that it's going to be okay. We don't know that we are
Mm.
safe in the truth. We push and we resist against the truth because probably sometime when we were kids, it was like you had brought something to attention that was true and then you were punished for it or it was ignored or something terrible happened, real or not, and your child mind put it together like I told the truth and then this terrible thing
Right.
happened.
And
And
also, especially when you're a child, if you are punished for something, the threat there is to be kicked out of the tribe,
yes, and
which,
to be
okay,
yeah, death.
which means death.
Yeah, it's
So
real.
it's
and
internalized. Yeah.
And I was just listening to a book this morning all about how the mind works and everything. And in the book, they were talking about how, and I knew this before, but it was just so fresh on my mind that as a child, you are incapable of analyzing a situation to understand,
Mm.
like, this is connected to this. That's
Right.
why children are so susceptible. So if a parent is the abuser and you're 4 years old, it's like, oh, that's reality. Okay. And you actually still bond with the abuser, which is why it's so toxic and so pervasive. Because if it happened to you when you were 16 or 22 or 45, like, you can go, oh, hell no. And you can have a different experience. There's choice, there's power, there's analysis specifically.
Mhm.
Where as a child, there's no analysis. And that's why those patterns get so stuck because they're still out of the gauge, out of the gaze of analysis until we lovingly bring them to light. And so
Hey, hold
acknowledging the
on, hold
truth.
on. And
Yeah.
let me interject
Yes.
that it's also true that, as just with you with your first marriage, when you're screamed at for the
Yes.
first time in your life, it's so jarring
Yes.
and surprising and remains so each time it happens until now it's a pattern.
Yes.
Well, holy shamoly, then that's when we hold true the sanctity of marriage or the importance of staying married. I was raised Catholic.
Yes.
Believe me, my first divorce was earth-shakingly difficult. I
Oh,
could have
you had to
tried
break
harder.
through so many
Oh yeah.
things.
And,
Yeah,
and and it was like I was turning myself inside out. It was only because of Hurricane freaking Katrina that I didn't force that thing to quote work, which would be me sacrificing myself at the altar of marriage
right.
to try to help someone who was like, undiagnosed and pathological and like all
Yeah,
the things and dangerous to me
yeah. Mhm.
because I was self-erasing. Holy shamoly. Well, we got to do this again very soon. I know I want to be like, I don't want people to be like, well, an hour and a half later, Naomi and Mel are still going at it. But
We could
it
though.
is complicated. And I just
Yes,
want to put out a couple of more hits on journaling, journaling, journaling. I've got a
yes.
gratitude journal coming out electronically this week. It's going to be 99 cents. Obviously, you can buy it in paper, you can write on paper. But when you have the prompts,
Mhm,
even when you don't follow them, that's the value of a journal that someone has made for you. Just to suggest things, just to make you understand how are you feeling on this day and putting it into your bailiwick, what's happening with the planets that might be influencing everything on earth. Huh.
mhm.
Interesting, right?
Indeed. Absolutely, yes.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And my lovey, please, please, please reach out to either Naomi or myself with any questions. Hugs, hugs, hugs. And hold on. Meemaw can't see without her peepers. Now I've got a stream pop up. There we go.